Previously on Working Title.
I went there feeling like I was the greatest designer in the world, and within 5 minutes of meeting the director there, Ronell, I was shown the error of my ways.
In this episode, I believe the most logical next step that we're supposed to take and the thing we're supposed to talk about is criticism. And this word is one of the very first things that any creative person in the industry has to deal with. Did I come too close there for comfort? Yeah, have a look at this ring light. That most creatives have to deal with in this industry really early on is criticism, because the very first thing you ever create, whether you're showing it on the internet or whether it's just you and your best mate, your roommate George, who has been your best friend since you were in grade 8, that's a bit too specific. But basically you get criticism from anyone who ever sees anything that you do. You get criticism for what you wear, you get criticism for how you talk. I'm probably getting criticism about how long this beard is getting. The very moment you create something, you open yourself up to criticism, and I thought this is the best conversation to have right now. So criticism, what is it exactly? Basically, it's any kind of feedback that comes as a result of your work. So in the creative industry, be it as a graphic designer, photographer, copywriter, anything that you do in this industry subjects yourself to criticism. And I just wanted to talk a bit about criticism. And from the previous video, I mentioned a certain company where I worked at, where I had my ways changed and altered in a way to let me understand a bit better about where I actually stood in the pecking order or in the totem pole, on the totem pole. Zambian. I think we're going to have to start keeping track of how many times my Zambian accent bleeds through. So anyways, in my very first job, I had to deal with criticism on a level that I was not prepared for at the time. But through that criticism at the time I thought this man just literally opens up my soul and takes a dump on it, because he was brutal. I actually have never dealt with that level of like criticism, I think, ever. Or maybe he broke the upper limit of what can be taken as criticism. So criticism comes in the two forms. The positive one, which is basically you put out some work and someone criticizes some of the shortcomings, some of the mistakes, some of the gaps that you have, some of the rookie things. There's so many things that new designers do, and most of them being bevel, emboss, drop shadows, outlines and things like that many rookie people do, because when you're just starting out, you feel like the work isn't done until, like, the more you add to it, the more the work shines. But then as you learn and you do more of this work, you realize that the work is actually done when you can remove nothing else from it. If you look at a design and you can and there's nothing else you can remove, then the work is done. Usually it's the opposite when you're just starting out, because you're thinking in terms of, oh, I need to add this, I need to add that for it to shine, for it to sparkle, for it to have that nice glistening thing. It needs to have all these mixed elements that come at it. So positive feedback is great for that, because you need to know how to stop making rookie mistakes. So negative feedback is then what is that then? What is negative feedback? Negative feedback is usually your work sucks, and I'm not going to tell you why. Basically, negative feedback, I believe, from my perspective, is just feedback meant to highlight your shortcomings without the purpose of helping you become better. And I believe that it's damaging, for sure. It's definitely damaging in that it's an attack on someone's self-esteem, someone's ego. And I hope that through this conversation I can help you understand that you have to detach yourself from your work. What you are creating is not you. Yes, a piece of you gets put into it, into the crate, but once it's out and people are looking at it and all feedback being directed at that work, be able to differentiate yourself from that, from the work. Be able to separate yourself, stand apart from your work, because you will always continue to improve. Once that work is out, that's the best it can be at that time. I have logos that I've designed. My first logo, my very first logo, it was a Palo logo. I hope I can find it. It was 3D. It had drop shadows. It had all the things that I just mentioned most rookie designers do, and if it doesn't work as a logo, and I was hoping I could use it for my music career, because at some point I got into Fruity Loops and I thought I could, get into the music business, making electronic dance music. Check out my SoundCloud. Yeah, what's up, it's your boy. But anyways, I made that logo for back in the day, and it was terrible. It, like, looking back now, it's terrible, but at the time that's the best that it could be. So if someone had looked at that logo at the time and properly shat on it, I would have been touched, because at the time I hadn't developed that self-awareness of detaching yourself from a project. And this is something that happened fairly recently. So if you still find yourself attached when someone criticizes your work, you feel like it's an attack on you, do not feel bad at all, because it's very difficult, to be honest. You can't work at something for 4 to 6 hours and not be emotionally attached. But what I'm here to tell you is that you have to learn to be able to separate yourself from the work, because the work, when it comes out, that's the best it will ever be at that given moment. But you, my friend, I'm looking at you. You will continue to improve. So whenever you receive criticism, be it positive or negative, understand that it can do two things. It can stop you in your tracks, or it can build you, so that work doesn't have to be the best work you ever have to do. So most times you will find it very difficult to detach yourself from the work. But do understand, if you take nothing from this video, understand that when you get criticized, you're being criticized for the quality of work you're generating now. It's the artwork, it's the piece that you've put out into the world. That's the best it can be at that time. And the criticism is simply a means for you to become better, so that you can elevate yourself beyond that work. Everyone has work they look back on and say, what the hell was I thinking? And at the time, that was the best thing you ever did. So being able to detach yourself, being able to think like that, where you say, the criticism I am receiving right now, be it positive or negative, is more to build me and not the artwork. The artwork is the best it can be. I have done the best that I can with the knowledge that I have, and this person X doesn't like it for these reasons. If they're giving you positive feedback, then you know exactly how to make the next piece better. Always look forward to the next piece, I feel, because that always gives you motivation regardless of how you receive criticism. And criticism is something that you not only have to look at as something that comes from the outside, because I'm now going to touch onto a bigger criticism, the one that actually does real damage. Most people can deal with external criticism. Most people can deal with feedback from outsiders telling them that their work isn't good. But the one that really destroys, the most dangerous type of criticism that a lot of creatives have to deal with is self-criticism. The one that comes from within, where you are your own worst enemy, where you're constantly battling yourself. And I'm going to share something with you. When I released last week's episode, it was so impromptu. I did not expect myself to upload the video. I didn't expect the video to do as well as it did. I know it didn't have like 1 million views or anything like that, but the few people, the 50 of you that commented on that thing made me realize that this is something I need to continue doing. So once the light went back and the hype had died down from the previous episode, and the adrenaline from editing the second one had died down, I now started to question myself, to say, what are you doing? This is not something that you have any business talking about. And that kind of criticism, that level of criticism, is actually the reason that this video is a bit late, because you live with yourself all the time. You're constantly walking around with your own thoughts, and that critic is one that you have to deal with every single day. And to take a page from what I've already said, always take that criticism as a means to improve yourself and not the work, because the work, once it's out, it's out. You can improve on it, but it's not this. It's the first instance of that work, that was the best work that it could be. You can improve on it and continue updating it, but that's a waste. Like, you're wasting your own time going back to the same project and improving on that. Once that's done, if you're doing it for a client and it's been approved, and you look back and say this isn't the best that I could do, then use that as fuel to push for your next project. So the summary is, there's two types of criticism: positive and negative. Positive is feedback that points out any shortcomings that you have, any mistakes that you're creating, any newbie mistakes that you have, and pointing out some of the things that you can do better. This is the best type of criticism, and I have people that I go to that I know will give me positive criticism. One of them is Levi Salima. But you're Leviticus. How are you Levi? Anyways, Levi is a great friend of mine. We constantly swap artwork all the time, to just be able to get a brutal, like, sometimes the criticism has to like really hammer at some of the things that you are even insecure about even going out, because when you're putting out artwork, there's some things that you know you could have done better at, and you're hoping maybe no one notices, or you're hoping that they somehow work for the betterment of the entire artwork. So having a criticism buddy is great. Have one that you trust to always have your back, who is interested in your growth as well. So Levi Salima, George Chansa Lupari, my business partner, shout out Stonebox, shout out Origins, shout out iFlex Studios, has always been, these guys have always been, and to mention other people, have always been great critiques of work. When they look at your work, they're not just going to say good, because that's another thing that you also need to avoid, is fake praise. You need to avoid that, because you develop that level of I'm the best that I had when I went to work at the first place I worked at, and you need someone who's actually going to tell you that your work is substandard. It is derivative. It's boring. Where did you even get that idea from? Someone who's going to give it to you the way it is, for you to improve. If you really are interested in improving, it's always great to have someone that you can rely on, that will give you that level of honesty in criticizing your work. And there's negative criticism, which I've talked about, which is basically just feedback, negative feedback that is aimed at breaking you down. It's terrible. Avoid it whenever possible. But when you do find yourself on that end of the spectrum, remember to detach yourself from the project and be able to use that to improve your next one. Some people give you negative feedback, are not even interested in your growth. So even when you do grow, they'll still find something to hate on about. And usually you have yourself as your worst hater to rely on for that. So with negative criticism, always use that to push yourself a bit further. Be able to dissociate yourself from the work, and know that some negative criticism has no interest in improving your skill set or your craft. And when it comes to self-criticism, always understand that if you're a person like myself who constantly has to deal with the voice in their own head telling them that whatever they are doing isn't good enough, you have to distance yourself from that and just say, yeah, that's why I continue to practice, because I know I'm not good enough. So you will continue to get better as the voice goes out, and eventually it will get drowned out sometimes when you put out some really good stuff and you're like, you know what, shut the hell up, you don't know what you're talking about, this stuff is great. And you need that every now and then. You need to be able to look at your work and be proud to say, wow, I made that. And the when you have more of those moments, the voice in your head will still be there, but it'll be a bit quieter because there's a louder voice that says, hey dude, you really went all out with this. And then a few months later you're gonna look at that and be like, what did I do there? But that's the cycle. It's the pendulum that swings from good to bad. You always have to move from a point of over self-confidence to over like judging yourself a lot. And that's what I thought I should share on criticism. If you have anything that you want me to let me know. I hope this video has been useful to someone. If, like I always say whenever I share this, if this helps one person, even just one person finds some value out of this video, then I will have done my job in helping out someone who's coming into the industry and is dealing with some of the things that I've dealt with, that I deal with on a daily basis. And if it can help one person, then I've done my job and I can continue to do this. So until I fight my inner demons and get the opportunity to come up with another topic that we can talk about, I guess this is where I'm gonna sign off. Real quick shout out, this video has some sponsorships that don't know they're sponsoring it. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your business. Shout out to Banda Bulls. I'm sure you've heard of Boer Bulls. There's now Banda Bulls, which is a new breed of dog that my very good friend Mambo, owner of the Ring Light, are breeding. Check out his page. It's Banda Bulls on Facebook. And also shout out to my lovely wife, whose story you can find in this book right here. I hope it's not flipped around. She writes short stories. Her name is Candice. I may follow her on Facebook. She Candy's Notes. Check out some of the stuff that she writes, like amazing stuff. And also this video was sponsored by Air Mkwai. Roll the clip.
Introducing a new player in the sky for that comfortable ride to wherever you want across the globe, connecting city to city. We are proud to introduce to you Air Mkwai. Integrity, respect, and service.
And as for the next topic, I'll see you when it happens, okay? Like, yeah, it'll happen when it happens. Ciao. So, the previous episode did really well, far better than I anticipated in the 5 minutes that it took to shoot it and get, just talk random stuff that was coming to my head at the time. So thank you so much to everyone that watched. Thank you to everyone that commented. I really appreciate all the amazing kind words that I've gotten through the previous from everyone who watched the previous episode. And I really appreciate most of all the guys and girl who participated in the previous voices from the industry.